From New York, it's Kevin McCullough. So glad you're with us on AFA Today on AFR Talk every weekday, right here in the middle of the day. And the exclusive purpose of this broadcast is really to keep you informed of what's going on news-wise right here in the middle of the day. And by the way, Fred Jackson heard me mumbling, stumbling, bumbling around on the Obamacare in the first segment. He shot me this over just off the AP. Healthcare.gov, not accepting new applications because there's a problem with the website. So they're working on it. They're going to try to get it fixed, but that's why some people aren't signing up. But I still, we talked about the hardship exemption that essentially killed the legislation last week. I don't know that. They haven't fixed that, and I don't think they intend to. So I think you just say, well, I wasn't able to get it, and I had a hardship doing it, and their requirements of definitions of hardships really seem to be quite vague. So anyway, that's the latest. If it changes, I know that Fred will let us know, and I'll let you know. By the way, here's the other thing we want you to know. The reason AFA Today is here, and the reason that we try to keep you up to date on what's going on, is because we know that the information you get from us is different and in many ways more informative than you get anywhere else. And that in your life, you use AFR and AFR Talk differently than you do any other radio resource. We are somebody that feeds you, that gives you information, that helps motivate you to stay involved. So what we are asking for and looking for to hearing from you is, are we doing our job? Have we in some way raised the bar of understanding of what you have come to understand in the culture war, in the acknowledgement of the battles that are raging back and forth between the different sides? And if that is the case, we're asking you to share those stories with us. The phone number by which you can do that is 877-876-8893. That's a toll-free call, 877-876-8893. And when you call, tell us, what have we done that has benefited you, that has in some way helped you, that is on a regular basis provided a service for you that you haven't gotten anywhere else. We're interested. We want to know. We want to know if we're doing our job. And that's the job we've pledged to do for you, giving you the information that you need and the specific stories, that affect faith and family in ways that nobody else, even a lot of Christian organizations, don't cover. So that's the goal, and we hope that you will help us with that by sending your stories, 877-876-8893, 877-876-8893. All right, so I want to get to this story out of Texas because this is a mind blower. This is a shocker to me. I mean, not so much that. I'll just get. It's a huge win, and it's the type of thing that we need to see more of. Dr. Lester Minto knows he won't be able to reopen his clinic after a federal appeals court upheld tough new abortion restrictions in Texas. Minto has been providing abortions for 3 decades, but he closed his clinic near the Mexico border earlier this month because of the law that imposes some of the nation's tightest limitations on the procedure. The law, which was overwhelmingly approved last summer by the Texas legislature, has helped force numerous clinics to close. Now, a lower court judge initially ruled that parts of the law were unconstitutional and served no medical purpose, but the Fifth Circuit allowed some regulations to remain in effect while it mulled the appeal. On Thursday, the appeals court ruled that the law on its face does not impose an undue burden on the life and health of a mother. Now, the case is probably still going to go to the Supreme Court. Restrictions are already in effect that require abortion doctors to have admitting privileges, for example, at a nearby hospital, and place strict limits on physicians prescribing abortion-inducing pills. But other facets of this law won't take effect until this fall, meaning some of the 24 abortion clinics still open in Texas could also close. So far, the regulations have helped force at least 19 clinics to close statewide, including Minto's there in South Texas. Planned Parenthood had filed the lawsuit seeking to block part of the law. On Thursday, the organization said the appeals ruling meant that safe and legal abortion for who? Who? Who's it safe for? Because women get injured oftentimes in abortion and babies always die. So who's it safe and legal for? Okay. Anyway, meant that the ruling that safe and legal abortion will continue to be virtually impossible for thousands of Texas women to access. Texas Attorney General Greg Abbott, a Republican running for governor who defended the law in court, cheered Thursday's ruling from the panel of the Fifth Circuit judges. He said, "This unanimous decision is a vindication of the careful deliberation by the Texas legislature to craft a law to protect the health and safety of Texas women. Other aspects of the new rules, including a requirement that all procedures take place in a surgical facility, are set to begin in September. Those elements may be challenged in court as well." And jolly well good for them if they decide to. Here's what I've never understood, and maybe you can help me understand. 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. I don't understand a single woman being against this law. First of all, women wrote it, and women put it forward in the Texas legislature. It was mostly done by women in the state legislature. Yes, there were men that voted in favor of it, but the driving force behind this law were women. Also, this is a weird thing, and I can't quite get my head around it, but the driving force behind most abortions are men. We hear all the time from people saying, well, it's a woman's choice, it's a woman's choice, it's a woman's choice. And then you go read surveys of people that studies of people that have had abortions, and you look at the primary motivation for why better than 80 to 90% of women get abortions, and almost exclusively across that spectrum, there is a man involved on some level that wants her to do that. So I don't quite understand how feminists can be saying this Texas law is anti-woman and hurts women and is a bunch of nothing but an attack on women, et cetera, et cetera. And meanwhile, all the women going to get abortions, for the most part, are doing so at the behest of a man, and you never hear feminist groups criticize that. Well, shouldn't they? I mean, after all, shouldn't there be, on some level, if you're going to argue that men are evil and they're making this choice for women and it's terrible how they're treating women in the process, just on that argument alone, shouldn't you be able to say, well, why aren't you picketing the abortion clinics? Because 90% of the business that you're doing, the decision's being made by a man who's forcing the woman to get the abortion. I've never understood this. Does anybody have any clue as to why that isn't being done? Why the feminists aren't out there in mass raging against the abortion clinics, Planned Parenthood clinics, all the rest of the place? Why aren't they out there with signs and with bullhorns and everything else saying, boo, bad for a woman's choice, you made her get the abortion? Why is that? I honestly want to know. What do you think the rationale for that is? 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. I've never had a satisfactory answer for that in all my life, and I've scratched my head. I've tried to think it through. How do they say we're all about National Organization for Women? We're all about women. We want to help women, and we believe that choice is the ultimate answer. Except when 90% of women are getting that have abortions get them because of a man pressuring them to do so. Where is the choice in that? And that doesn't even begin to address the issue of the child. What choice does he or she have in the matter? What about all the little girls that are in the wombs of their mothers that get sliced and diced? How come they don't get a say? Now, I can answer that question on some level because they've said for a long time, well, that's not really a human being. Oh, okay. They just have two hands, 2 feet, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, just like you do, but that's not a human being. You let them be born, you bring them up in the world, they're going to turn into a full-fledged adult, just like you are, but they're not really a human being. What are they, Martian? Until they're how do you explain that? Well, they've kind of stopped making that argument. And you know what did that? It's very interesting because you have a lot of wide-ranging opinions about technology and was it good or is it bad? I think technology has fundamentally turned the pro-life debate on its ear. I think the reason you have freshman class after freshman class after freshman class coming into colleges now predominantly pro-life as young people is because they've seen too many 3D ultrasounds. They go, hey, that's a baby. Which, by the way, the reason Planned Parenthood fights so hard to keep ultrasounds and ultrasound machines out of the hands of crisis pregnancy centers, and they don't offer those services at places like Planned Parenthood. The reason that they don't, because they don't want that mother to see that picture of that child. As soon as they see that it's a child, things tend to change. That man's voice that's in their life somewhere, speaking down to them and condemning them and saying, you got to go get this thing killed. That voice suddenly begins to fade away when they understand, hey, wait a minute. Hey, that's my child. That's not just some clump of cells that looks like caviar on a dinner roll. This is a real human being. 888-589-8840. Let's start with Jim in Mississippi. Hey, Jim, welcome. Glad you're with us. You're with Kevin McCullough.
Thank you. I wanted to answer your question about why the feminists don't get upset with men who are trying to make women have abortions. I want to give you my opinion on it.
Sure.
But I want to ask you, have you ever spent any time outside an abortion clinic?
I have.
Then you know that it's not about truth. It's not about logic. It's all a lie. The whole thing is a lie. And the reason the feminists do not concern themselves with men forcing women to have abortions is because it's not about a right to choose. It is about the culture of death and advancing the culture of death. Most of these persons who support abortion, I think, are just pawns and lackeys. They don't really understand what they're doing. But the heart of it is purely satanic. And I think that's the answer. It has nothing to do with logic. It is all about the lie.
All right, Jim.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your straightforward candidness. I have a hard time disagreeing with that. Some people will kind of look at you cross-eyed if you say, well, Satan made him do it. Evil and the presence of the enemy of the holy God is still quite powerful. But I wish that we had public officials that when they would have these debates about these issues, that they would actually call things what they are. You have these feminist groups that put forward this idea that killing your unborn child is the way you're going to achieve equality as a woman. Somebody needs to answer that. Somebody needs to rebuke that. Someone needs to say there's nothing equal about that. That doesn't create equality. If anything, you're robbing a part of the soul and the heart of that woman when you take her child and kill it. And who's primarily driving that reason to do that? Men. It's not an issue of choice. So what Jim is saying is that choice is the big, Trojan horse. They're saying it's all about choice, but really, I think it's about wanting to not have consequences to the life that you want to lead. You want to be sexually active. You want to have as much sex as you want, but you don't want to make commitments to anybody. Abortion is now the answer. That's why in 1973 it became the answer. The argument was men can have as much sex as they want without penalty. Women can't. Consequences happen. They get pregnant. We got to deal with that. We got to find a way to expunge that consequence. And I don't know if you've ever noticed this, friend, but every time we try to take a consequence that God has in place by natural law, every time we try to get rid of it in our flesh, in our mankind power, we usually do a really horrible job of messing a whole bunch of other things up. And I'm certain that that's the case in this as well. Let's go to Krista calling from Texas. Hi, Krista. Welcome. So glad you're with us on this Monday.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. I agree wholeheartedly with your thoughts on lifestyle. I believe that is really at the heart of why there's such a powerful acceptance of the pro-choice model, because it allows people to make their choices of promiscuous lifestyles without the consequences or the inconvenience of a baby. And it's very sad that I think there's a blind eye because of that choice. And then secondly, I think, yes, it is a spiritual issue. And I was pro-choice just going through school and, being indoctrinated that, people should have the right to choose. But when my mind was changed was when I became a Christian and I was educated on it being, what really happens to that it is, what is it if it's not a baby? If it's not a child in the womb of a mother, what is it then? And you hit it right on the the real spot that the pro-choice people don't want to admit, and that's that science is on the side of truth. And that truth is that there is a baby in the womb of every mother that chooses to go through with an abortion.
Yeah.
And that's just reality. Science proves it, and it's proven also by the fact that you mentioned that the Planned Parenthood does not want education. They do not want that baby to be seen, because there will be an emotional, in many cases, an emotional response to seeing
overwhelmingly
a live
absolutely
child in the womb. And I think that overnight we would see a reduction in abortions just by that one action. I guess that's my only comment right now.
No, that's good stuff, Krista. Thank you. What a good binge thinker you are, obliterating confusion, speaking to the truth. That's what this is, friends. And when you understand that that the enemies of life, those that are pro-abortion, they wrap themselves up in choice. They do all this stuff, but when they fight against things like medical care that provides ultrasounds in their own clinics. There's no medical doctor that looks at that and goes, oh, well, that's being done for a sound medical reason. No, you want more information. If you're honestly trying to deal with a woman's health mid-pregnancy, you're trying to get as much information about the health of she and the baby as possible, not as little. So it's not even good medicine to not have an ultrasound. But Planned Parenthood doesn't want to do that because they may get exposed as being total frauds. I'm Kevin McCullough. This is AFA Today on AFR Talk.